there, welcome back to my channel Scrap and Coffee. My name is Ivanka and in this video we are going to construct the Time to Relax folio. As you can see, I've prepared my pieces, but there's a little bit of information that I want to share with you before we get started. First of all, you can find a free cutting guide on my website. There's a link provided down below in the description box with all the measurements. It's, like I said, a free PDF file. You can just download it and you will have all the measurements provided to you. I'm not going to call out all the measurements in this video. There are quite a few measurements that are like 1/16, 3/16. It's so you really want to have the measurements, but they are provided to you, and yeah, so I'm not going to call everything out. If you're using 12 by 12 paper like I do, you will see in the cutting guide that every single piece starts, at least for the base construction, I have to say, and what we are going to start out with is that you will see that the pieces are 7 1/4 by a certain measurement, and what you want to do is get 9 pieces of 12 by 12 cardstock and then cut that 7 1/4 inch measurement first, and that will leave you with 9 of these scrap pieces that are 4 3/4 by 12. And these are very convenient to use for your belly bands, pockets, etc. that we are going to put in this folio. So that's my first tip. Second of all, what I want to say is I highly recommend to not just change things around in the folio. It started out as being a folio that was supposed to be really easy, and I think now if you have all your information provided with the measurements, it's not super complicated, but to figure out all the gussets at the right place gave me a little bit of brain pain here and there. So yeah, I advise you to not change things around because things are coordinated with gusset areas, etc. Okay, so that's the information that I want to share, and then the last piece of information is what I'm using here is 80 pound weight cardstock, but it's a quite sturdy cardstock that feels like it's almost 100 pounds. So those are good weight cardstocks to use for a project like this. So what I want to show you last is the scoring. There are a few notes on scoring. For these pieces here, for the base, so that's for the base we're going to use pieces A up till H. And what it says there is sometimes you need to score a measurement and then turn your piece 180 degrees. And I want to show you that. I have here my second piece E, because that one you're going to need 2 of those. And I've already prepared one, but I need to do one more piece E. And I believe this one is 7 15/16 of an inch, so it's just under 8 inches. And it says score at 7 1/4. So you already know the 7 1/4 is a measurement that keeps coming back. And then it says flip your piece 180 degrees. So what you're going to do then is you're going to turn it 180 degrees. So your score line ends up on this side right here. And then you're going to score 1/2 inch. So when that's you find that in the cutting guide, then this is what you want to do. And what it does is it gives you just a little bit of extra space here in your gusset, so in between your score lines. So it's important to do it that way. So I will come back to this piece in a minute, because we are going to start with our pieces A, B and C. So I've cut and scored all my pieces. I try to catch my score lines in the light. It's always a little tricky for some reason for me, but I'm doing my best. So for piece A, that's the longest piece, we scored on the long side 2 times, so we have a little gusset area here, and we're going to make sure that we're going to see the bumpy side of our score lines. So we want that part to face us, that side. So we have that one, and then we have piece B that has again 2 score lines that are at the same distance from each other as piece A, as you can see that. So, and then there is a 1/2 inch strip. And for piece B, and that also goes for piece C, we are going to apply our tape on the bumpy side of the score line. So where the score line comes out of the cardstock, that's where we are going to apply a strip of tape. At least that is if you're using double-sided tape, of course. So you're gonna go in between the cut edge and your first score line at 1/2 inch. I'm gonna give that a burnish for a good stick, and I'm gonna get a scissor. And we're going to taper that 1/2 inch part. That means that I'm going to put my scissors, in this case it's just for hiding construction, you don't have to be too precise. Put your scissors just above that 1/2 inch score line and cut with an angle to, I think you can see it even better like that. So we can hide that construction on the side a little bit. So let me show that up close. There you go, this is what I did. So, and for PC goes the same thing. You put your tape on the bumpy side of the piece and you're going to taper that 1/2 inch part. So let's start with piece A and B, and I will show you PC in a second. So again, I'm going to make sure that I'm seeing the bumpy side of my score lines. I have my tape here and my score lines are here. So I have a short piece, score lines, and a larger part of the piece. And then I have that 1/2 inch that gusset in between the score lines and then the large part. This is how we are going to attach it. And now I'm going to attach piece A on top of piece B up to that first score line where you can still see that score line. Now I find it easy to just fold on that score line just a little bit so I can see it a little bit better when I'm attaching it like this. And now also it works for me easier for some reason to do it on the other side. And because I feel that I'm losing my touch a little bit lately, I'm also adding a little strip of wet glue on top of the double-sided tape, just to, if I'm not completely happy with my placement, I can lift it up. Not too much. It's pretty warm here, so then sometimes the glue starts oozing out, but I'm not meaning to put a lot on. So I'm going to bump it up against the score line and line it up top and bottom, and then place it down and give that a burnish, and I will show you up close. So we want to have it in this direction. Score lines here, a large part, a gusset area and a large part, and I'm trying to catch in the light that we can still see that score line there. Okay, then we can go to piece C, and we are going to slide our large piece to the side and we are going to attach piece C. So piece C has 2 score lines, only the space in between the score lines is smaller, right? Tape is on the bumpy side, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold it a little bit on that part, on that first score line, so I can see it a little bit better. And now we're going to attach our large piece on top of piece C, again up to that score line where we can still see it. And again, I'm going to turn the whole piece around because it's easier for me. So I'm kind of wondering why don't I just show you in this way, but that's just what it is. So again, I try to do not too much glue, but it's just for some wiggle time. And I do the same thing as I did with my previous piece. This is a large piece, so it's a little harder to control. Okay, drop it when I'm happy with my placement. I think I am. Give that a burnish. And again, I can still see both score lines here. And this is our outer base. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold on all my score lines towards that bump, which means that the bumpy side of your score line is going to end up on the inside of your fold. And when you do so, make sure that your pieces line up and then give it a burnish. So I'm going to do that for all 6 score lines. Okay, so I folded on that, and what we can do is from starting at piece C, we can just fold it in and fold this flap over, and that's the base of our folio. And we're going to add more flip outs in this base, and for that you're going to use the pieces D up till I believe it's H, right? So all of these pieces have the same preparation. It's the same principle. The only thing is that the space in between your score lines is different for every single piece. What we are going to do on these pieces is your tape is going on the indented side of your piece. So again, in between the cut edge and that first 1/2 inch score line, you are going to place some tape. And if you were wondering, I'm using 3/8 inch tape, giving it a burnish, and I'm going to do the same thing where I just cut off an angle. You don't have to be too precise, it's just for hiding construction. Just make sure that you don't cut into that score line. And I have a little bit of a cheat sheet here on where I need to put what piece, but of course we're going to start on the top of the cutting guide with piece D. And what I'm going to do is for every piece, you have 2 score lines, but I'm only folding towards the bump on that first 1/2 inch score line and give that a burnish. So I have piece D here. And then I'm going to attach it, and I'm using the fold line that I've just created to line it up in my base. So I'm getting my base in, and I'm going to flip it open. Here is my closure on top. I'm going to put something on it to keep the shadow away. And then we have our first large part here. And piece D is going to go on that part on your left hand side. And what is important before you attach your pieces is that you make sure that everything fits in between your score line. Now you should be fine, but it's always good to give it a dry fit. So you're going to line up the folded edge with the cut edge on the left. So I'm gonna do 1 or 2 pieces a little slower together with you, and then at one point I'm just gonna say where you need to attach the pieces, because it's all the same for every piece. You just need to know where to attach it. So just make sure that you stay in between the score lines on top and bottom and line up the edge. And I like to remove my tape backing just a little bit so I can line it up safely, and then once I have it where I want it, I remove it completely. So now that I have it here, I'm going to fold on my second score line, so we can put up the gusset straight. So piece D is in place now. Then when we open piece D that we just attached, we are going to attach our first piece E. Remember, we have 2 pieces E. So same thing, I'm only going to fold. I need to make sure that I don't go out of focus. My camera sometimes does that when I have a lot of black on the table. Same thing, I'm going to fold on that 1/2 inch score line. Give that a burnish for a nice crisp fold. So this is piece D that I've just attached. Piece E is going to go along the bottom, and I want it to line up with the cut edge here. And again, I really want to make sure that I don't go over the score line when I line it up with the cut edge. Now for these pieces, sometimes I'm not sure that I'm not getting in trouble with my score line there. So what do? I get my paper trimmer in. And I'm going to see if I can zoom in to show you up close what I'm doing with my measurement. So this is my piece E. Make sure you cut on the right side. I'm going to have my tape and my score lines on top. It's hard to see with the light reflecting. But the piece, I'm going to zoom in onto the measurements now. Well, I hope you can see this, but the piece should be 7 1/4, and I want to cut off the smallest hair. So not even a 1/16 of an inch. So 1 tick mark under the 7 1/4 is 1/16 of an inch. It's too much. I'm gonna go in between that tick mark and the mark for 7 1/4. So just the tiniest of hairs. So that's what I'm doing when I am not completely sure that I'm going to fit. So now when I line it up with the cut edge here, I can really see that score line. So sometimes I even do it just to be sure. But yeah, just a little tip there. So zooming back out. Half an inch. And we're going to align it along that bottom, right? So I like to turn my piece around so I can work on the sides. And again, I have to be a little careful that I stay focused. So I'm going to start lining it up at the cut edge side here. And give that a good burnish, and then fold on the other score line. And if you prefer to fold on both score lines before you attach, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm doing only the 1/2 inch score line, so it's clear what fold line I'm using to line up my pieces, right? So we can fold that up. Let me turn the folio. So this is what we did now. I'm going to fold that one up. We are going to attach something right here. So this is piece A. On the right hand side we are going to attach piece F. So I'm going to go a little quicker now, folding on that 1/2 inch score line, and we're going to line it up right here. I'm just giving it a quick check that I fit and attach it. Give it a burnish and fold on the second score line. Okay, so this top part is done now. I'm going to first fold in the left hand side, and then piece F will go over that. Then in the middle, so I'm going to flip open piece C now, and I will write down letter B here as well. It's just easier to communicate. We are going to do our piece G. And piece G will go on the right hand side of piece B. So same principle, I folded on that 1/2 inch score line, make sure that I fit. All of that should be fine. It's more like with if you put a second flap on your first flap attachment, that's where sometimes you need to do a little adjustment. No. And undo is your best friend when working with double-sided tape. Okay, I need to put this down flat so it doesn't curl up on me. Okay, there we go. I was just a little too high with my first try. That happens. And like I said, undo is your best friend in that case. So fold on my second score line. Flip this one open. Because right here on the bottom we are going to attach our second piece E. So again for this piece I want to do that small adjustment. So basically that is for both pieces E that I want to do that adjustment. So the tiniest of hairs, right? Just making sure that the score line stays clear. Because if you attach something over your score line, it's not going to fold in neatly. So along the bottom of piece G that we just attached here, is going to go our second piece E. Again, start lining up with your cut edge. That's what I'm saying, and it's not what I'm doing. and again fold on the second score line. Okay, then just fold everything in to give yourself space because it's quite a big project. And we end with piece H, and piece H is going to go on the bottom, piece C on the left hand side. Okay, piece H has the smallest gusset of all the pieces, and with that it's also a little harder to fold on that second score line, but I will get there. Especially when your cardstock is a little bit more sturdy, right, and it makes it harder. Okay, give it a good burnish. And put it up, the gusset up straight. Okay, so I folded this one in. I can fold this one on top of piece G that I'm looking at, and then this one on top there. Close it, and we've put our add-on flaps in the folio. So when we open everything up, and I don't think I'm able to get that completely in frame, but I will do my best, is you flip down 3 times. We can flip this one to the side, this one to the left and down. Then in the middle you can go to the right and down. And then all the way on the bottom you can go to the left. And that's the base that we've created. And in this base we are going to place our add-ons. So I'm going to prepare my add-ons. And for that I'm going to use the scrap pieces that I have from cutting the pieces for my base. So you can really use the pieces conveniently. Okay, next up in our folio we are going to make our belly bands. And for the belly bands you are going to need 2 pieces of eye that are going to form the large belly band. And with that you need 2 pieces of I1. They are called dividers. Don't mind the score lines here, I did a little mess up, but that's fine. I'm going to show you on the second one what you need to do. For the dividers, I've called all of them dividers in the cutting guide. What you will find is again a note for scoring. So in this case for piece I1 I need to line up the 4.5 inch side along the top of my scoreboard. I'm going to score 1/2 inch. And then it says flip the piece over, and that means that you're just going to flip it over where the score line is still at that 1/2 inch mark, but now you see the bumpy side of the score line, and then you score in this case 4 inches. So that principle is the same for every divider piece, you just find different measurements, right? So that's what you need to do for the scoring on those dividers. So for the dividers you're gonna place your tape on the indented side of the score line. But when I place my piece right now on my work surface, I have an indented side and I have a bumpy side. So like I said, tape will go on the indented side. So right here I see my indented side, so that's where I'm going to place my tape. And then again flip it over. So now here is my indented side, and I'm going to place my tape. And like always, give that a burnish for a good stick and fold towards the bumpy side on both score lines. So I always flip it over to give it a burnish, and then I will fold on this one. And again flip it over for a burnish. And what we did is we make like a Z-fold piece here. It's always hard to get that in camera, but once I folded all my score lines, I see tape here on the flap on the outside, flip it, I see tape there on the flap on the outside. So that's what you want. So I will prepare the other one as well. I already have my tape on there, right? But I scored this piece with the wrong measurement on top of my scoreboard. I didn't really notice, but that's okay. So my 2 pieces I are prepared. Then for pieces I1, the dividers. So then for pieces I, what I'm going to do is I already did that on one, so I will show you on the other one. Flip it over to the bumpy side, and on both long sides I'm going to draw a line 5/8 of an inch from the cut edge. So on both long sides. And then what you also want to do is fold on your score lines towards the bump and mark to where that 1/2 inch flap is coming on your piece. So you have a pencil line there as well. So also again for both sides. So make sure you can see that for yourself, and then you can get a piece I1, the divider piece, and that should fit on the sides, folded on both your score lines. You should line up with your pencil lines, and you have about, if you even out the space, about 1/4 inch on top and on bottom towards the pencil line. It's just making sure that we don't interfere with this attachment right here. And it doesn't really matter on what side you are going to stick this down, whatever works for you. And you might hear my some background noise here. That is because my oldest daughter has summer break from school. She's at home here with me. So you might hear her in the background. It's also distracting a little bit for me, so that's why maybe I come across as a little bit distracted. That's because I am. So make sure that I burnish on this one as well. And I will do exactly the same thing on this piece. I already did my pencil line, so that's a quickie for me. I only need to stick it down. And I think I already burnished these folds, but let's just do it to be sure. Okay, so pieces I and piece J. Now let's get our folio so we can attach them in the folio. And of course I have a certain place where this goes. So I flip it open one time. I flip my piece F open, and on the inside of piece F is where I'm going to place my first piece I. Now personally I want to have it centered, and I want to be pretty precise with that. So my piece is 4 3/4. So if I want to find the center of that piece, that is 2 3/8 of an inch. That's a measurement that I need to remember. 2 3/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to find the center of my large piece. Now this is 7 1/4, so center should be at 3 5/8 of an inch. So I'm just finding that center. So I have my ruler lined up with the 3 5/8 of an inch here on the side. And now from the center, my 0 is right here in the center, I'm going to measure 2. And I want to do that close to the cut edge, so let's go a little higher. 2 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to mark that right there on top. And I will do the same thing on the bottom. So 3 5/8 is the center of my piece right here. And then I need to mark the 2 3/8 of an inch. Make a pencil mark there. And then what I will do with my piece I is I'm going to line up this cut edge here, the right cut edge, with that pencil line. And then I have my piece centered on my page. And I want to make sure that I fit from top to bottom, right? But it should be fine with these pieces. So however you want to do this, I'm just going to start with on the bottom. And I need to remove the tape on the other side. So, where's my bone folder? I just want this to be flat for now. So that's, I use my bone folder for that quite a lot. So I'm lining up the point here with that pencil mark so that I get it centered, and then bring it along the bottom of my piece. Hold it in place and carefully remove the tape backing. And again, you can place some tape on here if you want to, but I'm not able to do that on top, so it's up to you if you want to do it, yes or no. Right now, I'm just going to remove both of these tape backings. If you're not sure about yourself, just add a little bit of wet glue on top of the double-sided tape and it gives you a little bit of wiggle time. So if you're not happy with your placement, you can lift it up. So I'm just going to hold this here with my hand, make sure it stays flat. And then with the other hand, I'm just going to fold this in a little bit so I can bring it up without sticking before I want to. And again, I'm using my pencil line to guide me so I'm straight. So I'm stuck down right there and stick it down. And it looks harder than it actually is. If you burnished all your folds nicely, it's not going to be too hard to put that in place. So that's the first one. And just to keep it easy for myself, I'm going to close this up. We are going to go all the way to the bottom. So flip down piece C and then open up piece H. And our second piece is going to go right here. So I need to do the same thing in order to make my piece centered. I'm going to find the center and mark the 2 3/8 of an inch. And again, I'm just marking it on the cut edge side, just like I did on the previous piece, but that one was on the right hand side and this time it's on the left hand side. Okay, and here will my second piece I be placed. So I'm basically going to do the same thing that I just did. And again, just remove both tape backings here. Hold everything closed and flat so you can bring your top part here to where you want it. And give everything a good burnish. And that's our second piece I in place. Okay, I'm going to do a little adjustment because I've been talking about pieces I and J. That was because I did a little adjustment in my measurement on the belly band that we are going to use right now, but I realized that I didn't need that adjustment. It wasn't gonna look good. So you're gonna need a third piece I, and that's what it's going to be in the cutting guide. So you have 3 pieces of I, you have 2 pieces of I1 and 1 piece of I2. And for the third piece I, you're going to flip over to the bumpy side and you are going to place your piece sideways, so your score lines are on the side. And what you're going to do is you're going to measure from your score line. I'm going to measure 5.5 inches towards the right. I'm going to do that again a little lower, 5.5 inches. And then connect those 2 marks to make a straight line. And you will do the same thing from the score line on the other side. So again, from this score line right here, measure 5.5 inches, mark, do the same thing a little lower, mark, connect your pencil lines for a straight line. And then what I also did is on the long side from the cut edge is mark 1/4 inch. So just mark that line and do that on this side as well. And then you've got a sort of a frame on here. And then you have piece I2, which is your divider piece. So I'm going to fold on the bumpy side on both pieces, give that a burnish. And again, while my piece is sideways, my third piece I'm going to line up the folded edges of piece I2, the divider piece, with the lines on the side. And basically this piece should fit in that frame that we've just drawn. So again, it doesn't really matter on what side you stick it down, as long as you space it out, right? But making sure that it fits in between there is like a good checking point for you to see if you did your measurements right. So I'm just sticking up that down by lining up that folded edge with the pencil line and give that a burnish there. And what you might want to do, but I'm not sure how much it's going to help you in this case, is put a little bit of tape, just simple tape. I do this in a lot of my projects, over that attachment strip, but it's really hard to do it later on this side that's going to be attached onto the folio. So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure if you want to do it, but you can do it if you want to. Okay, and then we are going to attach this belly band right in the center of the folio. So I'm going to flip open 2 times, flip open piece G, and then we are looking at piece B, and that's where we are going to attach this belly band. And it's let me see, does it make any difference if I place it like this, where my one is attached? I will slide the top one down and then the bottom one will be behind. And if I do it the other way around, then the top one will be behind. So I think I want to have the top one up front. So that means that I'm going to have the part that's attached to the belly band on the bottom side. That's how I'm going to attach it. And again, here I'm going to find the center, so I'm centering it out nicely like I did with my other belly bands as well, and the same measurements apply. So 2 3/8 of an inch from the center, once I found the center of this piece, which is at 3 5/8 of an inch. So I just marked that, and when we attach this, we really want to make sure that we stay in between those score lines, right? So we have to be a little precise with attaching this piece, so everything can continue to fold close nicely once we are done. But that it is fine in my case. If it's not fine, then you might just want to go back to your scoreboard and just score just under your score line and refold it, so you make it a little smaller. But I hope everybody should be just fine. Okay, again on the bottom, making sure that it's laying flat. I'm lining it up. I'm just bumping it up against the score line here on the bottom, and use my pencil line, right? And really try to bump it up against there. If you're going to be too high and too safe, you might get in trouble on top. So before I'm going to do anything, I'm just giving myself another dry fit, and I'm perfectly fine. So I will again remove both the tape backings. And I know that's out of frame, but that's what I'm doing. Removing tape backings. And again, I'm just using one hand to hold everything flat so it doesn't stick before I want to. And bring it towards the pencil line there as best as I can. So I'm using my bone folder here a little bit to help me. There we go. And give everything a good burnish. And then our belly bands are in place, so we can move on to our pockets. Okay, now for the pockets. Again, I've prepared the pieces K up to M. Only for K I still need to do the tape. So on that piece I'm going to show you, and for all other pockets you're going to do the same thing. So for pieces K, L and M, tape and the cutting that I'm going to do are the same thing. So what you're going to do is you have 3 sides with a score line, and on the indented side you are going to place your tape on the 3 sides where you have a score line. And so again, in between the cut edge and that score line. And you only have to go up to the score line that you meet, that goes in the other direction. Because we're going to cut off the corner, so if you're going to place it all the way to the end, that's just throwing your tape in the garbage. And it doesn't seem like much, but if you do a lot of pockets and etc., it will add up eventually. Okay, so when the tape is on all 3 sides, you're going to get some scissors. And here in the corner, your score lines come together and they make a little intersection. You want to cut off that outer square part here. But we're going to do that with a 45-degree angle, cutting straight through that intersection of your score lines. Just like that. So you do that on both sides, and that is for reducing unnecessary bulk in the project. And then we are going to fold on all 3 score lines and make sure that your flaps don't overlap, because then you will still have bulk, right? If they do overlap, you're gonna open it back up and you're just gonna cut a little bit more. So again, I'm going to place some dividers in these pockets. So for piece K, again, I'm flipping it over to the bumpy side. I fold over the long part, which is the bottom of the pocket, and I will mark to where that part is coming, like we did before, right? And then I'm going to measure again from the score lines on the side. So from that score line, and I'm going to do the same thing from both sides, but I'm starting here on the left. I'm going to measure 4.5 and come down a little bit. Again, 4.5, and I will connect those marks. So we've been doing this before, but different measurements. So and then from the other side, 4.5 inches, mark 4.5 inches, and connect those lines. And then if you want to, I'm going to do it is I'm also going to mark here on top of the pocket about 1/4 inch. It's for a guide. There we go. And now I'm going to do 1 3/4, so that should be fine. Yeah, I did that right. Okay, then you have piece K1. That's going to be your divider again. So I did what I needed to do according to the cutting guide, right? I've cut, I've scored, and I've placed my tape on the indented side of those pieces. And once folded on that piece, that should fit in between those pencil lines. Just look, I don't fit completely between the top and bottom pencil line. So if you don't fit, it doesn't matter if you go over the pencil line here on top. It will matter if you go over the pencil line at the bottom, because that will interfere with this flap. So you need to stay above that pencil line for sure. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just removing the tape backing completely. It's such a small piece. So I'm just making sure that I stay above that pencil line on the bottom and just line it up on the side. And then we have that one in place. So before I go to my other pockets, I'm just going to place it in the folio so it's out of my way. I'm getting the folio in. I flip it up, open one time, flip piece F to the right, piece D to the left, and then we are looking at piece A. And this pocket should fit in between the score lines. So I have a score line here at the bottom. I have a score line here of piece E, so that's the one that we used to line it up with the cut edge. So that first half-inch score line of what was piece D, and the first half-inch score line of what was piece F here. That's where you want to stay in between. You don't want to stick it on top of that score line. So that's why these pieces have a little bit of a different measurement, to make sure that we can stay in between those score lines. Now, this can be a little tricky, so I want you to take your time on this. I removed the tape backing from the bottom part, but do this however you prefer to do this. And I'm going to start on one side, making sure that I just bump it up against the score line here on the side, but also on the bottom. And if you're a little bit higher, stay away a little bit more from the score line here, that's all fine. And then just make sure that I stuck it down the way I need to, and then give it a good burnish. And then I will remove, and I'm sorry if my head was in camera. I always try to prevent it, but I also need to see what I'm doing, right? So I just remove all 3 tape backings. I'm going to hold this one flat, start sticking it on one side, sticking it on this side, and then give everything a good burnish. There we go, that's piece K in the folio. So close it up and then we can go to pieces L. And pieces L are really easy because those are just pockets, no dividers. So the only thing I have to do is fold, but maybe you still need to do your tape and cut off the corners. But this is all that I'm going to do to it. And you can choose if you want to place them in the folio right now or after we did pieces M. And I'm going to do everything in one go when we did pieces M, because this is just easy preparation. Put them to the side and then we go to pieces M. So on piece M, those are again pockets, and I'm going to give you two options. So let's start with the first option. Is where we are going to use the same measurement that we just did on piece K. So I'm going to fold over the long side of piece M, which is the bottom of the pocket, mark to where that flap is coming. So we've done that. And then again I'm going to measure 4.5 from my score line. And connect those lines. And do the same thing on the other side. Connect those lines, and I will again, just for a guide, also mark that 1/4 inch along the top. And then I need to see that I do that. 2 3/4 is what this needs to be. On piece M1, it's a divider piece, and it should be 2 3/4, but I wrote 2 7/8 in my cutting guide, and I felt that was a little weird because for piece K it was 2 3/4, so that's why I needed to check. But I cut it a little longer so I could adjust it to being smaller. So 2 3/4 is what it needs to be. And then I've scored it, put my tape, and I will fold on that piece. Again, make that divider, and it should be quite obvious by now again that divider should fit in between here. Just make sure again that you stay above the pencil line here that marks where the flap goes, right? So again, I just remove it completely, small piece. Okay, so we have that one, and then I need to fold and burnish on the other score lines of this pocket. I'm slightly overlapping here. That's better. Okay, that's the first one. And then for the second one, so in this one you can put like 4x4, you can also do 6x4s, but or 3.5x5 photos. In this one I'm going to go make space for 3x4 photos. So for that we're gonna do things a little bit differently. I'm going to fold up the long part, which is again the bottom of the pocket, and mark that to where that is coming. And then I'm going to start on the score line. Does it really matter? I think I want to start on the score line here. Let me do a quick check. Well, in the end it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to start on the score line on the right hand side, and from there I'm going to measure 3.5 inches. 3.5, and I will do the same thing a little lower. Connect that. Okay, then from that line I'm going to measure 1 7/8 of an inch. So for these measurements I'll try to put a little mark somewhere on screen. 1 7/8 of an inch from that line. So I'm measuring from the line here that I just made, and connect that. Okay, then we have our pieces M2 dividers again, right? And these are 2 5/8 of an inch in length, and on that side we've scored the 1/2 inches, so on 1/2 an inch and on 2 1/8 of an inch. I put tape on the dented side and I'm going to fold towards the bumpy side. So this is how we've measured it, right? So I've measured from my score line on the right towards that line and then towards that line. My first piece, let me do a 1/4 inch here on top. That helps me. Okay, put it back how we had it. So my first piece, I'm going to line up the folded edge with my line here. So I'm coming from this side and I line it up. So it goes, this part goes towards the right hand side. I hope that makes sense. Again, make sure that I stay above the pencil line on the bottom. So do I really need that pencil line on top? Probably not, but I'm just, I don't know. It makes me feel good if I do. Okay. So now our first part from the score line here up to this fold is 3 1/2 inches. Okay, then the second one we are going to place down in the same direction, lining it up with the second pencil line. Making sure that I stay above that line here on the bottom and stick that down. And then our space between this line and this fold line should be 3 1/2 inches. And the space between my fold line here and this fold line here should be 3 1/2 inches. And that's about right. So maybe I make it look more complicated than it is, but it's something that I really had to think about. But here we are. So give everything a good burnish. And we have 2 dividers in here. Okay, on to our folio. I have my pieces L and I have my pieces M ready. The first one, I just flipped it open one time. Open up piece F, open up piece D, and then I will close piece F again to give myself space, and open piece E towards the bottom. And on piece E is where our first piece L will be placed. So what I want to do with this is make sure that if I line it up with the cut edge, I don't interfere with the score line here. So I give myself a little bit of space on this pocket to make sure that it fits nicely there. And do this however you like, but I'm going to treat it like a flap. So on the long side, I remove the tape backing a little bit, so I can line it up here along that cut edge and line it up with the bottom cut edge. That's where I want to be nicely lined up, and then I will have a little bit of space by that score line. So, and then remove the rest of the tape backing, and then if you want to, we can place some tape over that attachment strip there. And then I can stick down the sides. Okay, now I can choose which M pocket I want to use. I'm going to do the one that has 1 divider, but does it really matter? No, you can choose. You can also make 2 of these if you like this one better. It's all up to you. That's all fine. And I'm going to line up this pocket directly on top of piece L, lining up the bottom of the pocket, switch it sideways. So the long side and then bottom and top. I want to line it up as best as I can. So I'm going to do the same thing that I just did. And just take your time. Open it up, I give that a burnish, and then I'm going to remove the tape, all 3 tape backings here on the short flap. I'm going to hold this in place and just slowly stick it down. Just let it fall into place. Okay, that's one. So I'm going to close this up. Then open up piece C, then we open up piece G. I will fold piece C back in to give myself space, fold down piece E. And our second pocket is gonna go right here. So we're going to do the same thing that I just did. Yes, schat. Wil ik het openmaken?
Ja.
1 second.
Okay.
Here. Okay, I'm going to open that up again. Place my tape, my regular packaging tape, scotch tape, however you want to call this. I like to give it a good burnish because it's not the best of tapes and I want to make sure that it stays where it is. And stick the sides down. So again I have a little bit of space there by my score line, that's on purpose. And then my second piece M will go directly on top of piece L, lining the bottom. Sorry, just line up the long side and then the bottom and the top, which is basically the bottoms of the pockets, right? So that's why I want to say line up the bottom, but I hope you get my point. And it can be a little tricky with all the dividers in there. Give it a burnish. Make sure that everything is folded over and remove tape backings, 4 pieces in this case. And I'm just using 2 fingers to hold these down. It's a little bit more tricky. Just start sticking on one side, that works for you. There we go, and just give everything a good burnish. So you can put 3 photo mats next to each other in this pocket without everything slipping and sliding. But if you've seen the project share, then you've seen how it works. I don't have any photo mats close by right now. Okay, so then there is one more thing that I wanted to do, because I gave ourselves just a tad more space for this section here. So I was thinking maybe on top of this belly band, which I don't know if you can see it on camera really well, or maybe it looks even worse than it actually is, but it's not on there completely straight. It's just a hair off, but I'm gonna live with it. Maybe off camera I will try to do it a little bit more straight, but I think I'm just gonna leave it. I probably only make it worse, so. But I was thinking maybe on top of the belly band here, I can do a belly band in the other direction. So this is 4 3/4, so and then I will do 3 8-inch flaps, so I'm going to make it 5 1/2. So this is something new. I'm just figuring it out right now. I have some scrap pieces here left. This is way too wide to my liking, but yeah, that's 2 inches. But I can cut that down. Maybe 1 1/4. Let me try 1 1/4. Okay, so I made 2 pieces here that are going to be labeled as N and N1. And I'm going to use 1/4 inch tape on this because I only made my outer pieces 3/8 of an inch. So this is just what I just came up with to do. All of the other stuff was pre-thought out, not this. So on the dented side, I'm going to put 1/4 inch tape on those sides for piece N. And then for piece N1, also 1/4 inch tape on that outer space, but only on the short side. So I'm gonna make like a stacked belly band here. You just want to be a little cautious with how much you're going to fill that up. Okay, so I'm going to fold for piece N towards the bumpy side. And then for piece N1, I'm going to cut on the score line here. I'm just going to cut just above it up to the intersection, and then from the bottom, and I do that straight, and then from the bottom I'm just cutting with an angle. So you cut out that corner piece like that. And I will do the same thing here. So I cut just above the score line up to the intersection. So I'm going to cut the score line away. And then from the bottom, I'm going to cut with an angle. And then again, fold only on your side flaps. And now I didn't do a really nice clean cut there, so I'm just going to cut that away there. Okay, now I need to decide where exactly do I want this. So this is on piece I in that middle section, which was on top of piece B, the base of piece B. So let's decide a height for that. I'm going to center it. 2 3/8. That's about right. I'm just measuring out here now for a second. Okay, yeah, let's do 2 3/8 from the bottom. Then we have a little less space on top, but that's fine. So from the bottom, I'm measuring 2 and that's not right what I'm doing there. From the bottom, 2 3/8 of an inch up. And from both sides, 2 3/8. So that's my little guideline that I place my first piece straight. So we start with piece N. Line it up with the sides and then use your pencil marks to get it straight on there. So it looks a little on the low side right now, but that will be fine. That's one. And these are just small pieces, so it's a little easier to work with. Oh, come on. Bring it to the other side and stick it down. And then piece N1, we are going to slide that 1/2 inch part behind piece N, and it will stop automatically at the score line. Just make sure that you line up nicely on the sides. So I give that a dry fit, and if I know that I'm doing it right, I'm going to remove these tape backings. I'm going to slide it in. Okay, I hope that last part was on there where I slide it in and I stuck down the side. So you slide it in just to be sure, because my camera stopped filming. But you slide in piece N1 up to the score line. Make sure that you line up here on the sides of your belly band. And then just stick down the sides. So you will automatically stop at that score line. If you still see a score line right now, that's fine. So what we can do with this is we can put something behind the belly band. And you can also put something right there. Just a fun element, but don't bulk it up too much, but we had space for a little something there. And I will probably play with some pattern paper on these large belly bands here to maybe make a little tuck space or something, but I don't have the space to really build another element. So now we can start working with our pattern paper on this, and I'm going to use this collection from P13, Time to Relax. I'm hoping that I can make it with one 12 by 12, but I have a second one if I don't make it, but I hope I'm going to make it with just one. So this is what I'm using, and yeah, you can fit larger photo mats in several places. So do you want me to go through that? I don't know. I think 7 by 5 can go behind these belly bands. Here you can put full-size photos behind the dividers. You can make a layout here. So here you have large room for a larger photo mat, and then 4 by 4, 6 by 4, 3.5 by 5 in those small ones. Also on this belly band that we just worked on, the last part, you can put 7 by 5 but in landscape orientation. And then the same thing goes here, right? Only in this one I can do 3 by 4 photos in this pocket. And a large photo mat here. So there is enough room to play there. And on the empty spaces, also when we flip things closed, you can do layouts, but just keep your bulk in mind. And what I also want to do, but I will turn on my camera when I get to that point, is make a little magnetized closure. You don't really need it, but I just think it's a fun element, to keep these two sections closed before we close it, because I kept a little bit of space in between those two sections to do that. So that, but I will turn on my camera when I come up to that point, because I haven't figured it out completely. But yeah, so we can start playing with pattern paper right now, and then hopefully we have a nice folio. So I hope you enjoy the project. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.